Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Apologies for that. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Licensing A hearing. My name is Kimberly Sohn. I'm clerk for this meeting, and the first order of business is to elect a chairman for the purpose of this hearing. I've had nominations to elect Councillor John Rubini as chairman. Could I have a proposer and a seconder? Thank you very much. And therefore I elect Dr. John Rubini as chair for this hearing.
Thank you very much, and welcome all of you to the chamber at Waverley. I'm hoping most of you have been here before, but I'm not sure. Anyway, if I could just introduce first of all, I'm Councillor John Rubini. I represent the Shottermill ward in Hazelmere on the borough. I'm also a county and a town councillor. So I then, like to my left, Councillor Gale, if you could just say a few words, please.
Yeah, good morning, everybody. I'm Councillor Gale. I represent the wards of Whitley and Milford, and I'm also a parish councillor for those wards.
And next, Councillor Keane.
Thank you, Chairman. I am Councillor Jackie Keane. I am a councillor for Shottermill and Critchmere and Hazelmere. I'm also a Hazelmere Town Councillor.
Thank you. Now, Gillian.
Janine Carson-Jones, solicitor in Waverley's legal team.
Thank you. And Paul.
Paul Hughes, licensing manager.
Thank you. And then the organiser, runner of everything, Kimberly.
As I say, I'm Kimberly Sohn, and I'm Democratic Services Officer and Clerk in this meeting.
Thank you very much. So, on to item 2 on the agenda, which is the hearing. I'd like to introduce the title of the application under consideration and the intention of the hearing. So the hearing is to enable the committee to consider the submission and reach judgment under the rules and guidance imposed by the Licensing Act of 2003, and having regard to the Council's statement of licensing policy, which, as far as possible, is acceptable to all parties within rules and guidelines imposed by the Licensing Act of 2003. Could I ask the applicant, which one's the applicant? Lovely, if you could introduce yourselves, please, and present the case.
Councillor, my name's David Roberts. I'm solicitor from Knights, and I represent Real Cinemas. And I have with me this morning my client, Mr. Mohammed Faisal, who is the operations director for Real Cinema. Also on the end of our team, I have my son who's actually on a day's work experience with his dad, so I hope you don't mind his attendance.
No, that's fine. I look forward to seeing him in the future, perhaps.
I think he has other ideas other than the law, so which is probably not a bad thing.
Thank you. If you could present them, please.
Thank you. Good morning, councillors. This application, as you'll be aware, is an application for Real Cinemas. It's an application within the Brightswell Yard development in Farnham, and is an application for a premises license to operate the cinema, which will be a 6-screen cinema within that development. Councillors, I have handed to you this morning, which is my version of the documents. The only reason it's exactly the same as what was sent to you, it's just that this little package here is numbered, so it should make flicking through pages a little bit easier, I would hope. Councillors, the first page in this document shows an illustration of the Brightswell development, and just for illustrative purposes, the proposed cinema entrance is within the courtyard, and it's this building here to the right, just there. I think this is the art of CGI, but it's an effective demonstrator really of where it's located. The plan below, councillors, is a plan of the site development, and my client's application site is just here. You'll note that there is a green courtyard, and then to the right of that there is a block of yellow with a block of orange behind it. And then the lower left-hand corner, there is a red blob. That's where the cinema entrance will be. And it then extends over the first, second and third floors over the back of the car park area, which is actually the orange area. And that hopefully should give you a bit more of a context of where it's located. Councillors, the plans submitted with the application are in your agenda pack. And I can refer to those at pages 35, 36 and 37. Sorry, that's it. They're in the agenda pack. That's the committee's agenda pack. Sorry. Thank you. And then on page 35, you'll see the entrances at the ground floor level. And then on page 36, you'll see the main first floor, and customers come up through the main first entrance here, up the stairs or up the lift. And we have a foyer area here for purchasing tickets, for purchasing confectionery and drinks, and a small seating area. And then we actually have the entrances to the 6 cinema screens, including the Lux Lounge, which is the more luxury of the rooms, which is just here to this bottom left-hand corner. And then there's the other 5 screen rooms here. And then, councillors, you'll note that there is another plan, and this plan here is to reflect the fact that obviously with the raking of the seating, we actually end up over several levels in terms of the floor area, but effectively it's not additional screens, it's the existing screens as they go up, and that's hence rather strange plans, but that's the nature of this premises. And then, councillors, the plan at the final plan is purely the service plan. Councillors, this application is made by Real Cinemas. Real is the UK's largest independent cinema operator, and they have 15 cinemas operating across the UK, and they're currently, including the proposal at Farnham, they're currently in progress with 3 new sites as well, which I'm sure, as you can admit, in current times, in terms of the impact on the cinema industry, that's actually really positive investment in terms of the industry. Councillors, this application before you, I think more begs clarification of what this application is not than what it is. This application is for a cinema operation. And as you can imagine, our client wants to provide a flexible operation that provides the ability to provide a wide range of cinema-related activities within the premises. And our customer base is our cinema goers, those people who are attending for entertainment at the venue. Councillors, you will note, first of all, that the licensable activities in relation to this application are quite wide, and there's 2 reasons for that. One, our client is trying to keep some level of consistency in terms of the licenses it holds for other premises across its estate, because that's quite effective for management in terms of the business overall. But more to provide flexibility in terms of how those facilities are used. Councillors, the anticipation is that the average day of the cinema operation is likely to end when the last feature ends approximately 11:30 of an evening. As you can imagine, with cinemas, films and features extend at different times, and screenings are also staggered throughout the day. And that means that different films can be shown at different times, but also operationally, it means that customers can come in at different times, so that there is no, I've lost the word now. There's no, effectively, it means that you're filtering through the customer base through, so that actually there's no rubbernecking of customers in public areas, and it means that people can come and freely go as they want. Our client are offering here a premium cinema experience, but in a family-based entertainment environment. And clearly that's the reason why we need this flexibility. There are, however, councillors, occasions throughout the year where there may be film premieres. And therefore, the extension of the hours is to reflect the ability to facilitate those premieres effectively. For example, when the new James Bond film comes out, there will inevitably be a height of frenzy for that event. And quite often we have customers who will want to see that as soon as it's launched. So if the film is launched, say, on the 1st of August, then we will be wanting to show that film at 1 minute past midnight on the 1st of August, because that's what the frenzy's for. You know, that is part of the cinema experience. It's the customer base that we're looking for. And that's the reason why we're wanting that flexibility. Furthermore, it gives us the ability, perhaps if there was perhaps a trilogy of films or something that we're showing that may go slightly later into the evening, those are the sort of events, but those are more of an exception rather than the everyday rule. But again, it's what's expected of our client base. That's the sort of facilities that we're providing and that flexibility. Councillors, you'll also note that the application includes other licensable activities which might on first glance not be thought to be covered in terms of a cinema venue, but it is actually to cover over any ambiguity between the Licensing Act in relation to the provision of activities. For example, Real are actually showing the Andre Rieu concert at the end of August, which is actually a live music concert, and that again is to be shown in the auditorium. Also, we anticipate that there is likely to be some element of demand for use of the facilities with the local performing arts of the university. And again, it gives us the flexibility to use those auditoria for the provision of entertainment in those events. However, councillors, what this application is not for is for a late night drinking destination of the equivalent of a bar or restaurant. There's been a lot of concern about the inclusion of alcohol with this application. And also there's been a lot of contrasts between how this relates with other premises within the locality. I can certainly assure you, councillors, that our intention is not for this to become a drinking destination. The provision of alcohol is there so that we can offer our customers the odd drink if they wanted to have that alongside the film. As you can imagine, post-COVID, the film industry's had a lot of challenges, and it wants to make sure that it can offer films and show films in the most comfortable environment it possibly can do. And it's not uncommon for people to want the occasional drink whilst watching a film. Mr. Faisal could probably confirm, but actually in terms of those customers who actually do purchase drinks, we would expect them only probably to purchase 1 or 2 drinks during the duration of a film. And the reason for that is because they're there to see the film. We will provide a pre-order service for customers who are in the for when they arrive at the auditorium, but we will not provide a weighted service effectively during the course of the film. For the very simple reason, it causes disruption. And also with alcohol, overconsumption also causes disruption, which we don't want. Customers are in there to watch the films. They're there to see a film. That's the customer base. And also it's a family related environment as well, obviously subject to the categorization of films, of course, but that is why we're looking for flexibility in relation to this. Councillors, in terms of your licensing policy, your licensing policy doesn't have a cumulative impact policy, and the committee are well aware of the nature of cumulative impact and what that imposes. And that enables local authorities, if they wish to impose a cut-off time effectively where new licenses will be considered for a certain time set by the licensing authority, unless it can be proven that those premises will not have an impact on the licensing objectives. And there's a clear reason there. The idea is to stop over proliferation of vertical drinking destinations. Councillors, not only do you not have a policy in Waverley's licensing policy in relation to cumulative impact, not only do you not have a policy that relates specifically to Farnham, where this premises is located, but furthermore, I'd actually suggest that if you did have a policy, a cinema would not fall within that policy because it is not an environment that is going to have an impact on the licensing objectives. So I'd just like you to bear that in mind when you hear the representations that are going to be made shortly. Councillors, the other point to make in relation to this application is you're not being asked to consider a planning application. Whether a premises is suitable or not for use, that is a matter for the licensing, that is a matter for the planning committee. Your focus is on the licensing objectives. Councillors, in relation to our application, you will note in terms of the operating schedule, there's very little in there. And that is because actually in the way that we deal with licensing applications, we like to engage with responsible authorities when they make representations so that any conditions are actually specific to what the concerns are that are raised by those relevant responsible authorities. You will note in relation to this application, there has not been one representation from any of the responsible authorities in relation to this application. While that's not an endorsement, what it does show is that there is no concern from those responsible authorities in respect to this application. Furthermore, councillors, we have had consultation with the police directly. And you will note that actually a schedule of conditions has been agreed with the police to assess some not concerns that they had, just some comments that they had in relation to the crime and prevention licensing objective. And you'll note in this bundle that we have here, that's my bundle, councillors, that at page 6 of that bundle, there is a schedule of conditions. Now, I do have to flag that there was a slight amendment made to this yesterday with consultation with the police. And the reason being was we just wanted to clarify some of the wording in terms of the location of the CCTV cameras, just to avoid any ambiguity, because the wording didn't include covering the main entrance. The ambiguity being that there would be an expectation of CCTV over every single fire exit. And obviously that's not necessary, and the police agreed that they were fine with that amendment. So you'll note there that there are 6 conditions there that deal with the provision of CCTV, the maintenance of CCTV recordings for a period of 28 days, the endorsement of a Challenge 25 scheme which operates at the premises. My client would have operated that anyway. Further clarity in relation to the identification that would be required on the basis of Challenge 25, the maintenance of a refusals book, and also staff training in relation to the Challenge 25 policy. Those were all conditions that were discussed with the police and had no concern with by my client, because those were practices that it has in place anyway. Councillors, in relation to the provision of nuisance, I just want to touch on that very slightly, because there has been reference in the representations made to this going to cause disruption to people, residents in the local area. As you can imagine, my clients have considered the development proposal at Brightwell Yard very, very carefully, because what they want to do is they want to offer a venue which actually sits in and complements that scheme. I think that scheme actually is quite an exciting scheme. I think that's the way I think town centres are going to start looking more, I think, in the future. I think that balance between residential but also other social uses in that locality. The cinema actually is the perfect anchor. It's the perfect venue, because actually the cinema doesn't cause any nuisance. The premises themselves are specifically constructed for that purpose, for ensuring that there's no disruption between films, between auditoria. There's also been, in terms of the design and development, specific work done in relation to sound attenuation to ensure that actually other residents don't have any impact either from the premises. That will inevitably bring on the comments that will probably be made by our friends here this morning about the impact on local residents as people spill out of the premises. Councillors, we can assure actually that's really carefully managed. The reason being is because of the showing times that people the showing times and the film schedules mean that actually that dispersal of people in and out of the premises actually is really quite carefully managed, because we make sure that people come out at the right time. The other point is that the premises are very close proximity to the multi-storey car park. The multi-storey car park then exits away from premises very clearly. And also in terms of the times of the events, as I said earlier, it's not expected that the majority of films are going to finish after 11 o'clock at night. And again, those will be the later showing films. It won't be all films that will be on will be shown that late. Councillors, this application actually is a real asset to Farnham. And my clients actually are really quite excited by how this actually can integrate with that local area. It's a real unique offering, and I think councillors, there is everything to be said that actually this is an application that you should grant in full. One point I would like to respond to that has also been made in representation is about the later hours and the concerns about those later hours, and the suggestions made that we should be applying for temporary event notices for those later events. Councillors, this actually is an application whereby we could apply for temporary event notices, but that doesn't give us the flexibility to operate this premises in the best way possible. And there's several reasons for that. The capacity for the premises is actually just over the 499 if it was full. So that would actually not enable us to apply for a temporary event notice if we were to use the full capacity of the premises in any event. Secondly, we need to have that flexibility for events for several reasons. One, because we may have perhaps a weekend when there's a couple of premieres. Premieres do clash, and there's a requirement for temporary event notices to actually have a 24-hour break between one temporary event notice starts and one temporary event notice finishes. Also, councillors, from an administrative perspective, the suggestion is being made here, we can make up to 26 temporary event notices during the year. That means my client potentially making 26 separate applications in respect of a license it's already applying for, which is here. Now, obviously, as you can imagine, that's an additional administrative burden on the licensing team itself. It's an additional administrative burden on my clients when they have got a license. And also, councillors, temporary event notices do not include conditions. So the requirements in terms of any conditions that you would consider necessary to be added, if that was the case, wouldn't actually apply to those temporary event notices either. So actually the temporary event notice doesn't work. It's much more effective for those extended hours to be dealt with here. And again, councillors, we are not looking at providing a late night destination venue that's fueled by alcohol. This is a film entertainment complex of the highest quality, and therefore it's appropriate and suitable for it to have those extended hours. And that's the reason why this application has been made by it as it has. I don't know whether there's anything else to add. Councillors, I think the next stage is for me to invite any questions that you've got, and hopefully between myself and Mr. Faisal, we may be able to address them.
Yeah, before we go there, Paul, licensing officer, anything to add to that presentation? And of course, did you want to guide us, the committee, as to what we're supposed to be deciding?
Okay, thank you, Chairman. You have in front of you an application for a new premises licence for Real Farnham commercial unit at 8 Old Market Place, Farnham, Surrey, where 6 valid representations have been received from other persons objecting to the application. There have been no representations received from responsible authorities, although the applicant has engaged with Surrey Police during the process and agreed conditions which are attached to Annex 5. In brief, the applicant seeks to license the premises for regulated entertainment, films, indoor sporting events and recorded music, 24 hours a day, Monday to Sunday, regulated entertainment, plays, live music and performance of dance, Monday to Sunday, 10 AM to 02:30 hours. Late night refreshment, Monday to Sunday, 2300 to 0500. Sale of alcohol, Monday to Sunday, 10 a.m. till 02:30 hours, and opening hours 24 hours a day. As the applicant has pointed out, and also given this out today, there was some response to the objectors, which we sent out previously on Tuesday, I believe. Officers request that you consider the matter.
Thank you for that. Right. As we know, this is a formal hearing, but we're trying to make it as relaxed as possible. And as you say, the subcommittee will ask you questions, but they will be proportionate relevant to the matter under consideration, and they should not be unnecessarily intrusive. Councillor's solicitor may intervene if the questioning exceeds a reasonable limit. And before I go there, I just want to ask Kimberly, are the ward councillors allowed to ask questions?
We can.
Okay, can I don't want to take them now, but can you indicate if you wish to ask a question later? Sorry? Okay. Right, so let's carry on with the questioning then. Subcommittee, is there anything you'd like to ask either the applicant or our licensing officer?
Yeah, I have a few questions on security. Outside of your main entrance, I understand the main entrance goes, oh, sorry. I understand that the main entrance is on the ground floor, and then to access anything, you go up inside the building before you come to concessions or whatever. Is that correct?
That's correct, councillor,
Yeah,
yes.
okay. Do you propose to have any outdoor security on your door? I'm thinking of after 11 o'clock at night or something like that to disperse any crowds.
Thank you. We normally don't tend to have any securities in our premises. We've never done that in the last 20 years, operating those premises, because the main reason is that we want people to kind of see those premises as a family premises rather than something that they probably see as security outside thinking what's going on in here. On the other hand, the development itself is going to have the security as what we believe in order to maintain the whole development. So we wouldn't be looking to do anything on that at this stage unless we find that there's a problem that we need to resolve, which we believe we will not have. Other than that, yeah, that's the point that we have.
Yeah, I understand you don't really want security men standing outside at 3 p.m. when Disney is showing or something. I'm thinking more of the late night operating hours after 11 p.m., which is when you could find people collecting there from other venues within the town.
Can I just say use your mic? That's it. Saves your neck.
Thank
Yes,
you.
from other venues in the town, they could collect at your premises to try and gain entry. So I wondered if that would be something you might consider for the late night events.
What normally happens is that once our last show goes into the cinema, let's say that's gone to 1 minute past 12, 1 minute past in the morning, we normally have the door system which is operated one way, so people can't come in, people can go out. So I really don't see any reason why we need to have a security for those things. Also, normally when we have those events which are running, after 11:30, the maximum number of people that we have will be around 100, because we only tend to give one show to those screening, still making people to come back on the other day. So we make it an event, but we don't make it that everybody we want all 6 screens to be fully booked for that evening. So that is in that manners we see that we try to manage that, preempt that situation by having less people in the cinema.
Councillor Keane?
Oh, sorry, just a couple more quick questions, if you don't mind. For the after midnight showings, which obviously are the very popular blockbusters or whatever, do you pre-book all the seats for that online, or do you have people walk in off the street?
Most of them will be encouraged to book online at the moment. The way our current trends working in our cinemas, that over 50% people book online nowadays in general for any showing, rather than they are kind of evening or in the daytime, and you will get some walk-ins as well. But bear in mind that we will stop our sale as the film starts. We do not sell any tickets once the film has started.
Councillor, can I just come back just on the point that you raised about the door supervision, which I think is also a relevant point. The provision of door supervision, I can recognise in the circumstances where you have late night drinking destinations, and obviously this is not it. Not only have we got the expertise of Mr. Faisal and the existing business that operates, showing that there's no demand for that, I'd also just like to flag up that that's not an issue which has been raised by the police either. And normally if there was a concern about the provision of security staff, that would be something that would be raised by the police, and that hasn't been raised as an issue at all.
Councillor Keane.
Thank you. I think Councillor Gale has covered the points that I wanted to make. We are mindful of the residents, so the one thing we do want to avoid is any disruption to their sleep at night by people gathering and this sort of thing. And obviously when you've got the blockbusters on, this is one of the things that we want to be sure that we're not going to have people sort of queuing around, and this is why we are very keen to make sure that these events are ticketed or pre-booked so that it doesn't disrupt the residents. And I think Councillor Gale has said that. So this is something that I'm very keen to see. Thank you.
Did you want to answer that, or?
Sorry, sir, I wasn't quite sure whether it was a question or a statement.
Okay.
but sir,
There's nothing you want to add?
if I can respond to that, I think the way that the world has gone now in terms of online booking, that's more of a feature anyway these days in terms of booking tickets. I think it has to be borne in mind that for premieres, there's going to be a range of different premieres with different demands on them depending on the popularity of the film. I think that it also has to bear in mind that my clients are fully aware in terms of that integration between the premises and the locality. And actually, I think what Real see is actually that a lot of their customer base is actually immediately going to be on their doorstep, and they actually are adding a facility to those people who are residents within the development as it is. I can't rule out that there may be the odd occasion where there's perhaps a little bit of excitement that's drawn by a premiere, which actually is quite a special thing in itself. But we're not talking about a constant disturbance to residents on an ongoing repetitive basis, because we wouldn't want that. And furthermore, the other concern that we have is obviously from a licensing act perspective, we still have to, regardless, hoping that you will graciously grant this application today, we still have, in addition to the grant of a license, the responsibility to uphold the license and objectives, which obviously includes public nuisance. Otherwise, if we don't do that, we give ourselves a great risk of being subject to licensing review by those residents on the basis of a noise nuisance, and hopefully not coming back before you, but whereby you have the ability to add us additional conditions on that license. What I haven't seen, councillors, is actually any representations made from anybody who are living within the Brightwell Yard development already. But furthermore, I would also point out that actually those residents who are looking to move within that development are also aware of the existence of not just the cinema, but other licensed venues that may be located within that locality. And that also has to be put into the context of the decisions that are made in relation to those residencies also. I hope that helps.
Yes, food. My concern has always been that if you offer food, can anybody walk in off the streets that food without going to the cinema? Because what I could see is if your cafe, whatever it is, is slightly away from that. Could somebody say go down the pub at 11, finish, and then come in to try and get some food from yourselves? Is that possible, or will you be able to vet that?
Sorry, I didn't get the question.
Would you be able to supply food to people without
the-
going in,
Who are not at the cinema?
who are not at the cinema, if by walking off the street?
So the food that we kind of sell at the concessions are the popcorn, the ice blast, the tea and coffees, and snacks like Maltesers. So all this is widely available in any 24-hour supermarket for people to buy. And we don't have any intentions really to sell. But if somebody comes in, at a time when we are selling food, not the alcohol, if they say, can we have my child would like to have an ice blast, can I have one? Then I would not refuse that, if that makes sense, but not alcohol.
Okay, so the food you're doing is really confectionery, not anything else.
That's correct. The only kind of hot food item that we have, it's pizzas, but to be honest, the uptake on that is very minimal. Our kind of 80% is popcorn and soda that we sell to the public in the cinemas.
Sorry, sir. I don't know whether they might be able to help. I actually glanced over the provision of food in my presentation. I wonder whether actually I might be able to just give you a bit more information about that.
If you could, please, because I
Yeah.
hadn't noticed a bit about the pizzas.
Yes,
I thought it was more complex. Would you like to turn your microphone off when you finish?
Sorry. So if you just turn into my bundle of papers at page 3, I think this is probably actually a helpful demonstration, actually. So this is that elevation drawing, and if you look across, councillors, this is actually the food and beverage counter. And councillors, this is what you'd expect to see in any typical cinema format. And you'll notice that there is a section for ice creams. There's a section in the middle for drinks, and not only would that be alcoholic, but also and predominantly really soft drinks, ice blasts and the like. And the area to the right hand side, I think, is for more of the food offerings such as popcorn and nachos. I have got here, but I've only got one copy. If you don't mind me just presenting this, and then I can pass it to the others as well.
Councillor King.
Thank you. So looking at this, all the food that you're selling till 5 in the morning is inside, not outside.
Councillors, you've made some good points there, actually, that I'd just like to come back on in the entirety, because I know the concern of food and consumption off the premises was one of the concerns. The food being sold on the premises is intended for consumption on the premises. We're not offering a takeaway by way of the back door. What we are saying is, and the reason why both boxes are ticked on the application, because the Licensing Act is, there's a couple of issues with the actual application form under the Licensing Act that actually don't line up with the Licence Act itself. So it looks like so that box in terms of food, the intention is, what we are saying is, we're not, if somebody purchased a hot dog on the way out, which is not the intention, because actually when the last film goes in for showing, that area is usually closed down anyway. But if somebody was to leave the premises after 11 o'clock at night and they got a hot dog that they purchased that they were just consuming on the way home, we're not going to stop that. There's no intention, however, for us to generate a Deliveroo style model with people putting in phone orders for pizzas to take away. The reason why we're saying, no, we're not going to stop people from doing it is because, one, we don't believe that it's actually going to be a major draw in the first place. And it's just a management issue, effectively. Can I just presume to consider, I've got the other bit of the menu, and I suppose I should just pass it across to our colleagues on the other side. Sorry, the other point as well, in terms of the late night refreshment that I should make. This is only intended to cover us off if we had a very late feature showing. The provision for late night refreshment is for hot food and hot beverages. Therefore, if we are to sell a cup of tea during that period of time, we still need to be licensed for late night refreshment. It's a bit of an anomaly with this type of operation because the legislation never intended really this sort of venue to require a late night refreshment license. It was really intended for late night takeaways and those premises where people who, once they've been drinking, congregate, obviously, and cause disruption in that regard. That's not intended here.
If I could just say that does clear it up a bit for me, because we, the way we were looking at it, it looked as if they, people could buy food from outside. I think this is, it was a bit confusing.
It's just not the market. It's just commercially isn't what we're looking to do.
Yes, please. Councillor Gale, if you'd like to give your question while he's doing that.
Yeah, I'm still just a tiny bit confused over one thing. The gentleman said earlier that if somebody walked in, they could go and buy some popcorn or a hot dog or whatever. You're not going to stop them buying a drink. So that means people could go in off of the street through your main door and up to your area and buy popcorn or whatever any time of the day. And the other thing is, if you've got the alcohol on sale there, how do you stop selling that alcohol to somebody that's just walked in off of the street?
Thank you. I'll pick up the alcohol first because obviously that's a concerning matter. That's why I think we are here for. When we give alcohol, we must make sure, our staff must make sure that we check that the person have got the ticket in order to get to the cinema. And in terms of popcorn, I'm not sure what to answer for that, really, is because I don't see any problem with that. If any residents who is a residence near our cinema or our facility, because we've got all the residents in there, a kid is asking for a popcorn and, I don't know, father, mother, grandparents, whoever comes out and say, oh yeah, why not? We've got a popcorn, cinema next door, let's go and have a popcorn there. So I don't have any problem with that. But in terms of alcohol, I just mentioned that, how we are dealing with this.
Yes, I understand what you're saying about the popcorn.
Yeah, but also once my concession is closed, which is after the last film goes in, not when the film comes out, that will be stopped. The sale of any food and beverages, including anything, will be stopped. So for the films who are possibly running 1 minute past midnight, the concession is closed at that point.
So if the concession closes as the last film goes in, which you're saying would be midnight.
Only in those cases where we have a late night show. Normally the film will go in roughly about 9 o'clock, the latest, because they will be coming out of the cinema at 11:30.
Yeah, okay. So I'm querying then why you need to have an alcohol license to 2:30 in the morning, because it seems to be across the board out in the Farnham area that 1 p.m. or 1 a.m. I should say, appears to be the cutoff for the sale of alcohol And I'm wondering why you need to extend it to 2:30 AM if you don't actually sell any concessions after the last film goes in, which would be around midnight.
Councillor, the reason for it is just to provide that flexibility. If there were events that were going on later, the cinema also has the ability that it can actually allow customers to hire the screens if they wanted a private screening. So there may be the flexibility there. But it's to provide that flexibility. You know, for example, if there was a James Bond premiere, Mr. Faisal might disagree with me here, but if perhaps there was 2 consecutive films that may be showed, perhaps on a very rare occasion, it may be a case that actually we would allow somebody to consume, purchase another drink afterwards. But it's not expected to be the norm, but it's to provide that flexibility for those later events. It's an exception rather than the rule, to be honest with you.
Yes, thank you for that. I mean, when I read this, my immediate problem was that if the local public houses closed at 11, they could then come to you for a hot dog, a pizza or whatever, because that's what people tend to do after drinking. They want hot food and you would be able to serve them. So can you reassure me that will not be possible, that somebody from another licensed premises can wander in, let's say after the pub is closed at 10, 11 o'clock, and then buy hot food from you and leave with it?
So I think the first thing to say is when that last film starts, those front doors shut anyway, so nobody can come in. So if there was a late showing, those doors, that's correct, isn't it?
Sorry, I just wondered about this question for kind of, if let's say a day when I close my premises, let's say 7 PM, would the other premises in the town will be having this situation where I say, what will happen if my people will, go to them? What will happen? I just don't understand that this is like something where cinema doesn't really come into that equation, where people come out from a bar and go to the cinema in order to consume anything. I have not seen that in 20 years, I'm afraid.
Yeah, that's not my question. I understand what the cinema is and what it does. My question is that when people drink, they then want hot food. If the public house is closing, an area of congregation could be a place that sells hot food. You sell hot food. So I'm not saying it's because you're a cinema. I'm simply saying that you provide hot food. What I wouldn't want to see is a lot of people congregating at the cinema to buy hot food after they can't get it elsewhere.
So I take your point. You're effectively saying, does this give somebody the opportunity through the back door to have a further drink before they go home effectively? The response to that is no, it doesn't, because we have a very specific market that we're targeting anyway. We don't want those people in the premises. And the reason being is we want cinema goers to actually enjoy the film without the disruption of others. It's very simple. And if somebody's coming in inebriated, that's going to have an impact, not just in terms of our management, but also on those other people who are there on the premises. That's not the intention of the market. I think, as Mr. Faisal has said, that actually when that last entry time occurs, when that film starts, the doors have got mags locks on them so that nobody can just automatically come in through those doors. They would actually go out through those doors, but they can't come back in. We don't want them in. And actually, we want to be in a situation where actually the evening is managed on a download. So the bar, and as I say the bar, the concession will close gradually while that film is on. They'll be clear up and tidy up, and then people will come out the premises. It's just to give us that flexibility, but there is no intention for any draw.
Right, thank you for that. Have I any other questions from the committee here?
No.
Then in that case, I'll look at the ward councillors. Is there a ward councillor Hess? Would you like to just explain to the representations who and what you are?
Hello, good morning. Thank you for coming to see us. I'm the Castle Ward councillor for Waverley and Farnham Town Council, so-called twin-hatted councillor. Chair, can I ask questions of,
Yes,
thank you. So I've got a few questions and a few clarifications. I'd just like to start by saying that personally, as ward councillor, I really welcome this cinema. I think get that put across to you that I think it'll be good for the town. It'll be enlivening. It'll do the Brightwells Yard development good to bring life into it, and that's what we need. So I think that's a positive starting point. But I've got some queries, and I think.
Councillor Hayes, can we have one question at a time, I think?
All right.
And could you
Okay.
make sure you direct it through me rather than directly to the applicant? So if somebody
Well-
would like to answer that from the applicant, would you like to answer that? I thought that was your
I-
first question. Oh,
No,
go on.
that was a preamble.
Oh, right, okay.
I hope you don't mind the preamble. So I think the first clarification was to clarify the issue of conditions that go with the 24/7 application compared with what David Roberts said about the temporary, and I might have got this wrong, so please help me if I've got it wrong, compared to the temporary event license not having conditions. So in other words, if a temporary event license was to be applied for periodically, it wouldn't then have conditions about hours of serving food and alcohol. So could you clarify that? I've got one or two other questions, but one at a time. If you clarify that one, thank you.
Thank you, councillor. Would you like to answer?
Yeah,
And then perhaps-
that's fine.
And then perhaps, Paul, did you want to say anything about that?
If I differ, but I don't think I will.
Councillor, the point made in relation to temporary event notices is only a general one. Temporary event notices were designed on the Act to be they were more designed to help school fetes and other sort of style temporary events. However, they are allowed to be used as a top up or an amendment to a license on top of what's already there on a temporary basis. But as there is no application process for them like a premises license, then any condition which will be that has a temporary event notice will only come with it in terms of the conditions of the hours and the licensable activities that are applied to it. In relation to this application, the conditions that we've agreed with the police in terms of age verification procedures, in terms of CCTV, etc., in terms of staff training, technically, are conditions that apply to the license but don't apply to a temporary event notice. So therefore, any other temporary event notice doesn't have any additional conditions to be complied with other than the hours to which it relates. That's simply the technical point that I was making.
Thank you. Paul, did you want to add to that?
Yeah, just basically, it's not an application form, a temporary event notice. It is a notice. It's for the applicant as such, telling us that that event is happening. And the only way to stop it, as long as they've applied for it correctly, is if the police or environmental health object on one of the 4 licensing objectives. So it's a notification that they're having this event, and it can only be objected by the police and environmental health.
Thank you for that, councillor. If you'd like to make your second question now, please.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. There is concern about the hours of serving alcohol till 2:30, because in the town in general, I think, as a fellow councillor mentioned earlier, the general latest closing time for the serving of alcohol across the town is 1 AM. And I feel personally that that's 2:30 is way too late to be serving alcohol. It's out of kilter with the rest of the town. So perhaps that could be clarified as well. We're not very happy about that, to be honest with you. Thank you.
Would you like to answer that?
So if you could just give me a second, just to take some instructions. Councillor, Mr. Faisal actually advised me that if this committee were to grant this licence they will be happy actually for those alcohol hours to be tailed back to 1 AM if that would provide some comfort. I'm hoping that that would actually assist on that matter.
That is an offer that we would like to consider. Thank you. Paul, have you got any comment on that?
No, again, we haven't got any impact zones, as they pointed out in Farnham or in Waverley at all, actually. And it's up to our applicants for what they apply for. They can apply for 24 hours. There's no restriction on any of the premises in Farnham. So any of the other pubs can apply for 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock, whether they get it or not, because again, it will follow the same process as this. If there's objections to it, it comes to committee, but there is no blanket 1 AM or 1:30 in Waverley at all.
Thank you. Councillor Hess, have you another one?
I do. Bear with me. So just for clarification, the food servery, I gather from Mr. Faisal, would be closed by the time the film finishes, or in actual fact, yes, so the food, when you come out of a film, the food servery will already be shut down, staff will be heading home, probably be happy to be heading home at that point. And also the entrance doors would only be allowing outward movement, not inward. So in other words, nobody's coming in because the doors are set up that way, and the food server is shut down by the time the film is finished. So there's no real chance of takeaway by the sounds of it. That's the real concern, because if people do get the chance to take away, they can sit down eating it, congregating in the public spaces and potentially causing a noise nuisance. So if you can just clarify that, I think it would be very helpful. Thank you.
Yes, if you could respond, please.
Sorry, sir, I was just clarifying a point with Mr. Faisal. So in terms of the door, I understand the maglock door is something that the business risks assesses. So what they do is they see if there is a problem, then they can apply that maglock door so that it only opens one way. I believe that the intention would be to actually just risk assess. If there was any concerns, they would apply it, but if not, then they would leave it as it was. But in terms of the servery, yes, that is correct. When the film ends, then after that time, the counter closes down. What I can't guarantee is if there was perhaps a private event and there was perhaps hot food or something provided for that private event with people who were on the premises, as this is teas and coffees and might be warm nachos and that sort of thing, then that's all what we'd be expecting. But again, that is not when we would not be expecting people to come in to eat food after that time.
Yeah, sorry, you've introduced something else there because I wasn't aware of private events. We were discussing publics, etc. So you would have this building, or what part of it would you be hiring out for a private event then?
So that would be private screening. So for example, if you wanted to watch James Bond with your friends in your family, you could approach us and we would hire the venue out. Likewise, if the university wanted to use it for perhaps showing of one of their perhaps art films or something like that, we would provide those facilities. It's a way of making it a little bit more communal, really, in terms of its service. It just provides that flexibility. And, you know, I know there's certain people I wouldn't want to share a room with when I'm watching a film. But again, it's to provide that flexibility. And that's the reason why this application as it is to provide the flexibility, but it is in the context we do appreciate where it's located and what the concerns are.
Paul, have you got any comment on a private event? I don't think it makes a difference.
No, that's fine.
Councillor Hess, have you finished?
Yes, I just would put the question in. We want this cinema to flourish. We want it to be a commercial success. We want all these operational details to work so that residents are happy, customers are happy, and you make money. But I just do wonder, because of, you know, there is, if you like, in the minds of a lot of people, slight uncertainty about how it will all pan out, whether the license, the grant of license could be reviewed in 12 months. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Councillor. We can come back on that. I know we can. So Paul, would you like to just reinforce that?
Yeah, just generally, the Licensing Act does provide that at any stage, once a licence has been granted, that it can be pulled back for review from either one of the relevant authorities or any person following. Obviously, they'd have to put in an application, and obviously they would supply their evidence as such as why they feel that it would come before a committee as today, and could be considered.
Chair, sorry, could I just also come back on
Yes, please.
that point? Just in relation to review, can I just emphasise here that Real are an established operator over 20 years. My client's never had a premises licence review previously, nor would it want to in the future. We're not talking about an operator here that is not going to listen to the community and the existing operations. We're talking about an operator here that wants to work with the community to make sure that the operation operates. We don't have any evidence that's been presented before this committee. Obviously, the parties making representations haven't obviously stated their case yet, but we have no evidence here of any potential nuisance being caused. And I caution the committee just to bear that in mind in terms of your remit, in terms of making the decision, because obviously in terms of the case law, you can only attribute conditions and restrictions to an application to the extent that there's evidence provided that would support that, and there isn't. We are at the stage of conjecture, and the concern is that if there are issues that cause problems and nuisance, we've got to be in there to be able to assess the environment and to make those adjustments on ourselves before even we get to a stage of talking to a license review. And I think that's something my client's very keen to make sure that we do in the process, but we've got to be allowed that flexibility to be able to find our level as well in terms of that balance.
Thank you very much. Councillor MacLeod, did you want to ask a question?
Thank you.
If you could
Chair.
just tell them who you are and your role.
I'll do that first. I'm the Waverley councillor from Moor Park. The relevance of that is that Brightwell's Yard, until the Lucent election, was within the Moor Park boundaries, but due to boundary commission changes, it's now in Councillor Hess's ward. But I still have an interest, actually. I'm also the Surrey County Councillor for Farnham Central, which includes Castle Ward, which is Councillor Hess's ward. And I should declare an interest in that Surrey County Council have got a significant interest in the success of this scheme, and they're investing in the commercial part of the scheme, and they'll therefore be your landlord from the point when they take over once the scheme is fully built out by Chris Nicholson. Surrey County Council become your landlord. So Surrey County Council have a strong interest in the success of the cinema, and we all do actually as council taxpayers. We're all Surrey Council taxpayers, so we're all interested in the success of the cinema. I will actually concur with what Councillor Hess says. We all want to see the success of this cinema, and in terms of speaking as a farm resident, it's very important for farm residents. But there are obviously some concerns which Councillor Hess has dealt with some of them, and I won't repeat the ones that he's gone into. But in terms of my own questions, I'd just like to ask, first of all, for clarification. One of the things, Chairman, that cinemas do these days is they have an upmarket screen. They tend to have a screen with better seats and that sort of thing. And there's often food served to the tables on these sort of screens. I'd just be interested to know if that's going to be the case with the Real Cinema, Chairman. Is there going to be food served to the tables in an upmarket screen?
Thank you. If you could answer that.
I think it's appropriate for Mr. Faisal to answer that one.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that. we've got one screen in there, which is a real lounge. And the way the real lounge works is that people place their food orders in advance. When they come to the premises, we welcome them with a soft drink, and we have all their food ready on their seat before they arrive. So there's no disruption while they are watching the film. And then they watch the film, consume the food, and food means hot dog, nachos, popcorn, drinks, or an alcoholic drink if they want to. And that's how we kept it very simple in terms of our offering. We didn't want it to make ourselves operationally very difficult to kind of in and out, and that kind of ruin other people's film as well. If you're walking in front of people who are watching the film, yeah.
Thank you very much. Could you turn your mic off? Thank you. It's just that we get an echo and feedback if you leave the room. You know what it's like. We want to be clear what we're saying. Councillor McClure.
Thank you, Chairman. The other side of the coin, of course, as Councillor Hess has covered, and as I'm sure David Howe will cover as well, is concerned about any disruption to residents. And I think you've answered several of Councillor Hess's questions quite well. But the thing I would like to ask is that a 24-hour license seems so open-ended, and although I'm sure you're going to operate in a responsible way, you're not going to want to annoy the local residents who will be customers of yours. So I'm certain you will want to do that. But it seems to me, and I guess Chairman, I'll address this as much to Paul Hughes as whether it's possible. Although I understand why you don't want to have the temporary license business that Paul has explained, but is it possible to have a restriction, Chairman, on the number of special events in the year? Not an overburdened restriction, but so you can't run events totally under your own discretion, and there's some limit could be placed, like, I don't know, 30, 40 events in the year as a maximum. That might give some reassurance to the local residents. I just don't know if it's possible within licensing laws, Chairman, so I guess I'd address that as much to Paul Hughes to ask if it's possible.
Thank you. Paul, did you want to come in first?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Yeah, you can put a condition on there and obviously work with, maybe discuss it with the applicants, but you could put, say, I don't know, 2 events a week, no more than 2 events after midnight events a week, or 5 a year, or 2 a month, 6 a month, 10 a month. It is a condition you can put on. Something maybe to discuss with the applicant.
Which I'm going to ask him now.
So, as you can imagine, I'm going to strongly resist that request. The reason being is that we do need the flexibility, and we do need to actually understand what the demands are in the locality. There is no evidence presented that there will be nuisance. This is all conjecture. And we're not in a situation here by which we have evidenced proof that people coming and going through that premises will cause disruption. We are a responsible operator, and we know our responsibilities under the Licensing Act, and we know the risks of not being able to sustain those. We do have to be trusted as an operator to run that premises in an effective, responsible way, which we will do. And I do not see why there is any justification for putting a restriction of this effect on the licence. Now, I'm sure the councillors and the parties making representations may suddenly turn around and say, well, this is because we're trying to be cloak and dagger about what we're doing. It's not. It's quite simply that we do need the flexibility to run the commercial operation in the way that we see fit as we develop it. We're prepared to acknowledge the restriction in terms of the terminal hour for the sale and consumption of alcohol. And we can understand why that has particularly caused concern. The premises is not a particularly large premises. You know, we're talking about a capacity of, I think it's just over 550, including staff. And we're not talking about a situation where all these screens and cinemas are going to be operating 24 hours a day, which I'm sure you all appreciate is not the intention. It's not the way we're intending to run the business. But we do need to have some element of flexibility commercially to be able to operate the premises as we see as appropriate. By having conditions on the license that restrict the number of events provides not just an administrative burden, but it also has an impact on how the business is planned and how it's operated longer term in terms of the timetables for films, the combinations of where there may be private hires, etc. There may be, for example, we want to do a feature, I don't know, just by way of an example, Halloween. We might want to show Halloween 1, 2, and 3 after midnight because it's Halloween night. We might have a customer who wants to come in on Halloween night, who wants to hire the Lux, the Real Lounge, who wants to see Halloween 1, 2, 3, and 4 on that night. And that might be a private event where we actually have got a very good rapport with those customers, and we ask them, would you mind leaving quietly, please, because we've got neighbours. We have to be allowed the flexibility as responsible operators to be shown to demonstrate to the local area how we can operate it effectively, not be in a situation where we put restrictions on immediately before we've actually done anything, where there is actually no evidence of any nuisance or that we're not responsible enough to manage that nuisance in that local area. It is a unique area. It is a unique development. And I actually think it's quite, being a licensing lawyer personally, I think it's actually quite an exciting development where you have that mix between residential and entertainment. And actually, as not as an experiment, but as part of that type of development, it needs to be allowed to have the flexibility to actually show it can work effectively as a balanced area.
Thank you very much. Councillor McLeod, did you have another one?
Yeah, I just respond actually, Chairman. What I would recommend to the committee is that in taking what Mr. Roberts has said, the committee might well agree with them, but it should be made clear that if the thing doesn't work out too well in the first year, and if there is too many complaints about disruption, the licensing would be reviewed again after a year. But I accept Mr. Roberts' point, and I think we should probably start on that basis, but make it clear that we'd review it, Chairman. That would be my recommendation to the committee. Thank you, Chairman.
Yes, that sounds sensible because we have got that power to recall. So if there are too many complaints, we won't put a number on the complaints, but Paul will obviously be collating those. And if there are, then yes, it would be subject to review, and we'd then start to put conditions on of that nature. Yes, you wanted to come back? Sorry, can I just ask the solicitor first?
I think obviously the review process is set out in the Licensing Act 2003, and that can kick at any time. So perhaps it's unhelpful. I'm hoping that it will be a very successful operation, and noted that the business has, evidence of establishments elsewhere. But it's perhaps unhelpful to suggest or promote a particular time frame for that to happen. If it needs to happen, it will happen when it's needed. And I think that's the position generally. I don't know if that assists, and you're welcome to add, of course.
Councillors, what I would say is before we even talk about review, I think we talk about sensible discussion. We're hoping there's no complaints. There's always one person who is never quite happy than the majority, but actually in reality, you're never going to be able to make everybody happy all of the time. But in reality, we would hope that there's sensible discussion, and if there were concerns, that there would be discussions before we even get to the talk about reviews and the likes. It is a process. This is a procedure that involves everybody's time and a whole deal of expense and investment. So nobody wants to get to those stages. But what we're saying is we hope, we don't anticipate that that's actually going to have to be a consideration.
Yes, thank you, because of course we will be discussing with the police if there were complaints. So it shouldn't be just a single one. It would be a problem in that particular area, and they would identify what that problem is. And if it came out to be the way you were running that, then obviously that would be the review. Thank you.
I think it's a matter of fairness. The applicant, they've mentioned their regulatory history elsewhere, and there have been no reviews. And I think we have to be respectful and understanding of that. And as the solicitors point out, it's very rightly evidence-based in terms of any suggested conditions, which must be necessary and proportionate in the circumstances. I don't know if Mr. Hughes has anything further to add.
Thank you, Chairman. That's my.
Okay. Did you want to say anything first? Did you have a question?
I've got several questions, but can I first of all ask the lady to actually repeat what she said? I couldn't hear a word she said. She's sitting too far away from the mic pointing in the wrong direction, and she's very softly spoken.
My apologies. I can briefly explain what I said, but the chair doesn't move much closer, I'm afraid. But effectively, I think I've reiterated that the applicant has made plain their enforcement history elsewhere in terms of their successful operation, and any conditions should be on the basis of evidence and relevant and linked to the licensing objectives. So that's the position in law when the matter's being considered. I apologise you couldn't hear me earlier, but I hope you can now. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. If you wanted a question, sorry, you have to present who you are and what you represent.
Thank you, John. My name is David Howell. I'm a resident of Farnham. Between 2016 and 2021, I was the chairman of the Farnham Society Planning Committee, which is the civic society in Farnham. And as such, I was on the society's executive committee. And in this regard, I was the lead member of the committee that liaised with the residents because of my role and my overwhelming desire to help the residents as much as I could. As a result, I got to know the concerns of many residents about all sorts of things in Farnham. Between May 2017 and to the current date, I write articles for the Farnham Herald under the heading Bricks and Mortar Reporter, basically on bricks and mortar activity, i.e. shops, pubs, restaurants and other activities, including Brightwells. I probably know as much about Brightwells as probably almost anyone else.
Can I just stop you there? Because obviously I've got to make a decision whether you can actually ask questions or not. So you're representing the local neighbourhood, is that what you're saying?
I'm a Farnham resident. I'm sorry, I'm a resident of Farnham, not a Farnham resident as in part of the group.
Mr. Chair, sorry, could I ask just one question, Mr. Howell? Which in terms of the representations in the pack, could I just ask you to refer to me which was your representation?
Mine's the one with the drawings on it.
Yes, I'm just going to consult my committee member. Yes, if you could restrict your questioning to what you put on the representation, then I think we'll allow the question. But please, can we make it concise and about what we're here for?
I don't see what I said wasn't that, but I will continue speaking. What I was going to ask you to do was to actually take into account what I did put in my email the 24th of June, which you've asked me now to do. The state related to that, it has been said that there was no responsible authorities objected to this application. I consider Farnham Town Council a responsible authority.
If I could just step in law and under the Licensing Act, in line with the statement of licensing policy, there are various responsible authorities such as the police, environmental health, the planning authority. So those are set out in the and referred to within our own statement of licensing policy. But I think it might be helpful to clarify that your attendance is welcome and participation in the meeting, of course. But I would ask that you consider and address the matters which are relevant to the 4 licensing objectives as you set out in your document. They will be taken into account in written form already by the committee as part of the deliberations and their decision making, and you're welcome to elaborate on the points that you've made within the document relevant to the licensing objectives if that assists you today.
Okay, is that clear? I mean, that's what I said. If you restrict your questions, please, to what you're elaborating on your document, okay?
So am I right in saying I can't comment on what was being said in the meeting so far?
I think that's correct. It's your question, please, and elaborate on what you've already said.
What I was going to do, and I've said that I've got more detail on the closing hours of the different bars and everything, but my concern is reduced now because they've agreed they're not going to extend the license beyond 1 o'clock. 1 a.m.
Okay.
I didn't say so, but having heard the presentation, I think it would be appropriate that Real join the local sort of organisation that controls the pubs and licensing, which is run by David Quick of Borelli's Yard.
So we can only hear this application. We can't go outside that. We can only go for this application. We're talking about this application, not those outside.
Sorry, John, I understand that. What I'm saying is that there is an organisation within Farnham that controls and discusses the operation of licensed premises within Farnham.
Yeah, can I just query that with Paul? 'Cause I'm not sure. Do they control that? It seems a strong word.
They might have an informal arrangement, first I've heard of it, but they don't control licensable hours. This is for the subcommittee that deal with licensing authority and that deal with the licensable hours.
Yes, thank you. That's as I understood it as well.
So I didn't actually.
So has that committee said, I haven't seen a bit of paper from them. Have they submitted anything, do you know?
No, they haven't. Well, I don't believe they have because the documentation was deeply redacted.
Okay, well, I'm
But
not
they
prepared.
they don't control the hours. They control the behaviour and discuss concerns and work together.
Okay, thank you. Paul?
Chairman, the only thing I think possibly you might be referring to is pub watch scheme, where all the publicans have what we call the pub watch. The gentleman that referred to the names personally referred to was previously the chairman of Pub Watch. He's not currently chairman of Pub Watch, but he is a member of the Pub Watch scheme. But they talk about who enters, who's been barred, what crimes have happened in the facilities, but they don't control hours.
I think if the cinema wanted to join that organisation, there wouldn't be a problem. However, it's not for discussion today. This is not part of the licensing application, so I'm sorry, no. Okay, Councillor Hess, do you want to pop microphone?
Sorry, can I finish?
Sorry, I thought you had. Go on.
No, I haven't. I was giving a pause as you'd asked the other two councillors to do.
Go on then.
So I didn't continually ask questions or in the role I have, there is great concern about the licensing hours and also the access for food. But I think in the main, those have been put aside. But the presentation made by the applicant has been poor, and there's lots of things that have had to be clarified today, which I think should have been actually put forward in the first place.
Yes, sorry, have you a question? Because that isn't a question, that's a statement.
So that was a statement. Can I also make another statement to say, just for the record?
I'm asking you for a question. Have you a question? Because it doesn't appear to me that you're asking questions.
Okay. With the maglocks on the doors, how do you control people not going in? Are you going to man the doors?
I think that's been answered. I understand what the matlock is. It's an automatic way of locking a door from one direction.
So I think that in the event that maglock doors are used, and I'm saying we wouldn't ask that for that to be a condition, but we will deal with it on a risk assessed basis. The maglock doors will not allow you to come in, but will allow you to leave the premises. We don't have any intention for there to be security. We haven't had that at other premises. if that was something that we did feel was a concern at the time, then we would consider that. But at the moment, we don't believe that that's necessary.
Okay, and of course, that would have to be done with partnership with the fire service as well to make sure there's no risk of any fires. So there are precautions already taken on that. So yeah, I mean, unless you've got a question.
Can I respond to what Mr. Roberts said?
Well, he has already answered it. Thank you.
As part of my role before I retired, I was involved in the installation of maglock doors to highly secure locations. And having a maglock on one door does not prevent people entering the property.
I think I accept what you're saying, but the point is, for this debate, what we're talking about is the way that people come and go. And I can't see, as they've said, about these hordes of people, but we'll continue the discussion. Councillor Hess, did you want to ask a question now?
Chair, yes.
Yeah, Councillor Hess, please.
Given that Real have been operating for a number of years in what, 14 other locations or 15? Quite a few. Just for the interest of members, do you have any kind of simple stat which would indicate roughly what the average number of special events, premieres and private showings and things like that your other locations have on average in the past? I mean, it'd be just quite interesting to know what the sort of demand is for this, because it's quite a bespoke type of offering. It's not like your typical View or Odeon cinema offering. This is quite bespoke, and I just wondered what the sort of average uptake and number of showings might be in the course of a week or a year or anything like that. It'd be just interesting to know.
Councillor, I don't
Thank you.
believe that that's a particular statistic that we have to hand, but I think particularly given COVID and the changes in the film industry, that's not quite a snapshot from 2 years ago, probably is not the same as now. But and likewise as well, there's the demographic of the local area, and that may have an impact, particularly in terms of take up from a private perspective. So I think it would probably be unfair to give that indicator, but we're not talking about every week. So
Okay, thank you. Is there any, sorry, I think we allowed you pretty latitude. We want to be as open as we can, but as I said to you, you've got to stick to what you put in. This isn't a question and answer session that we can go on forever.
Can I ask one more question then, based on what has been presented in this hearing?
Did you present it?
Sorry, would you repeat
Did
that?
you present it, or was it part of yours?
It wasn't specifically a question in my thing, but it's something that has been said, which I feel just needs to be clarified for your sake.
Right, I will accept this one, I think,
That
but
last one.
okay, but I might stop if I find it
Okay.
relevant.
So how do Real propose to manage the people arriving for a midnight screening when they're arriving in the Brightwells Yard?
Okay, thank you. I think there should be an answer for that.
So what we tend to find with films is that there's two categories of people who arrive. There's those who come in quite early, like to take their time in their seats, and there's those who actually aren't bothered about the trailers and want to go straight in for the film. So, so actually, we do find that actually there's like almost a natural sort of draw and dispersal of people in and out of the premises that actually works really effectively by itself. So councillors, we will ensure that obviously that the schedule of other films is staggered in the appropriate way. And obviously in terms of the late night event, those customers are going to be coming slightly later on. But we deal with this at other premises. We're used to it and it's effective. And if we find that there are other measures that need to be taken, then we will assess those as we need to do so. But we are capable of dealing with this. It's something that we do. It's what we do as an operator.
It's just supplementary to that. I'm assuming that, as you've said, that ticket sales now are mostly, or at least 50% on the internet, that would allow them to come in quicker. Would that be correct? Rather than handle cash and other ways of doing it at the time?
So absolutely. And there's some people who probably do not want to be distracted by the hot dogs and the popcorn and will want to go straight into the door. So exactly, it just works itself, quite effectively in terms of how those showings work.
Okay, thank you. So in terms of openness, I've allowed the questions to come through. Is there any other person who wants to ask a question, including the officers? Paul, have you anything that you wish to add? Gillian, is there anything you wish to add? In that case, can I hand over to you? Is there anything you want to ask the committee, please?
I have no questions for the committee. Are you asking me to just make my closing statement, sir?
I was just asking for a question, maybe. You hang on 1 minute. I think Councillor Go wanted to say something.
Yeah. Sorry, just one last question. For the showings after midnight, would you ever consider putting it into operation that it all had to be pre-booked seats so that you don't have just people coming off the streets ad hoc? Just a question.
I think what I'm considering here, what you're asking is a behavior from people, okay? And perhaps if you have never booked online in your life, but you want to come and watch a film, then you like to have that opportunity to buy that ticket when you come to the cinema. So I think we just need to be a little bit careful, mindful here for that reasoning.
Right, thank you very much. Councillor Keane?
Yes, I'd just like to thank you for answering our questions. It's been quite a long debate for you, but thank you very much for that. And you have answered a lot of the questions that I had in mind. So thank you very much.
Right then, yes, there's no other questions. So yes, if you'd like to do your closing statement briefly and succinctly, I'd be very keen.
So, Councillor, I don't propose to be very long at all. I think, hopefully we've given you a flavour of what we're proposing to offer. As I say, Real are very excited about this opportunity. I think it's a great location and a great opportunity to bring a really top quality facility to Farnham and to the local areas. I don't propose to labour on the points that we've made. As I say, conditions have been agreed with the police. None of the other statutory responsible authorities have made any representations to this application. And I do ask you to bear weight to that, and that is particularly important, including, we've not heard anything from the environmental health officer. They've not raised any issues in terms of nuisance. We've very proactively spoken with the police as well in terms of those conditions that we've agreed. And as I say, we're agreeable to the conditions that are set out at page 6 in that bundle being attached to the licence. As you've heard from us, we've conceded in relation to the hour for the sale of alcohol to 1 AM. We do require the other flexibilities that have been proposed in this application for the reasons that we've already outlined. I don't think you need me to stress anymore that, you don't need me to stress anymore the fact that, and as is set out in report, the tests to which you have to apply to this application. This is not a planning application. This is a licensing application, very clearly made in relation to the licensing objectives. It's one of those applications that, whilst there's not much information included in the application, that's because actually there isn't, cinema premises are not premises which fundamentally have a major impact on the licensing objectives, and that's what we're required to outline. And finally, the evidence. We've not heard any evidence, genuine, realistic evidence of any of the concerns that have been raised in the representations. We accept the concerns. We will consider that in terms of the operation of these premises, obviously, going on, but we want to work with the community. We want it to be a really successful venue, and hopefully, councillors, you'll take those points on board, and we would ask you to grant the application as submitted.
Right, thank you very much. So I'd like to thank everybody here for coming, and the ward councillors, and answering the ward councillors' questions. Thank you very much. So as we've more or less wrapped that up, we're going to retire at the back and consider matters. Paul, if you'd like to join us, please. And thank you very much.
Thank you very much, councillors.
Right, I think we're all here now. And have you started recording or? Yeah. Okay. And I hope the young man there enjoyed that session and is going to take some knowledge away from it as to how much we talk and debate. So that's where I wanted to start. It's been a full, frank discussion. I thank you very much for your answers and clarifications on many of those points. And I thank the ward councillors for coming and putting the neighbourhood view, and indeed even the person at the end who perhaps didn't agree with a lot of the statements that were going around. At least you've now aired them. Thank you. So what our committee has decided that we will allow the licence. We would thank you very much for the 1 hour, the 1 o'clock instead of the 2:30. I think as far as the community is concerned, that goes a long way to relieving their fears of disturbances. So what we do now, as I say, thank you very much for all the correspondence and the discussion today. So that was what we based our deliberation on. And we will be writing to you within the next 5 working days with it all set out properly as to the granting of your licence. Have you any questions?
So presumably that's granted with the addition of no additional conditions other than that 1 AM reduction.
As far as I'm aware, we haven't altered anything else. We're just accepting the document as it is, apart from that 1 hour licence.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, and thank you, everyone.
Paul, have you any?
Yeah, just to clarify on the conditions of, with the police conditions were added, if you've done the extra amendment, the one with the amendment they referred to, which is in their document, page 42, the slight amendment regarding the
Yeah, I think that
main entrance.
was that circulated? I had an email. It has been circulated.
It was circulated in the documents, but they made it an amendment today with their document.
Yeah, no, that amendment that was sent yesterday was circulated.
Oh, okay, lovely.
So it has been circulated. We have seen it and we have agreed to that document as it stands now in front of us.
Thank you, sir. So just for the clarification of the record, the application is granted with the addition of the latest versions of those police conditions, the reduction of the hour to 1 AM, but no additional conditions.
That is correct. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thanks for that clarification.
In that case, we seem to have come to a natural end, so I will close the meeting. As I said, thank you all very much for attending, and we look forward to seeing how it goes in the future. Thank you.
Thank you very much, councillors.